Prophet said, Allahumma ja'alhu hadiyan, mahdiyan wahdi bihi. Ya Allah, make him someone who's guided and guide through him. Make him a hadi, guide for others. Tirmidhi brings this report. And then in another narration, we find other wording for this dua. Where the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma allim Muawiyah al-kitab wal-hisab wa waqihi al-adhab. Rawahu Ahmad. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Allah, teach Muawiyah the knowledge of the book and the knowledge of hisab, which could be translated as mathematics, record keeping, logistical management, and protect him from your punishment. Once again, the Prophet is making dua for him. The Prophet ﷺ, by making dua for him, once again puts him in a position which deserves our respect. Last week, we started Hadith 298, which, if you recall, featured two companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Both of these companions are controversial. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan and Al-Mughirah ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhuma. And because their lives are somewhat controversial, I had to go on an aqeedah tangent to help you understand that when it comes to Sunni Islam, which is what we claim to be, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we view the companion from the lens where we hold them in high esteem, and we focus and fixate on their khair, and we give them benefit of the doubt for things that were controversial in their lives. And we try to be as charitable as possible when it comes to evaluating their lives. Why do we do that? Because Allah and His Messenger in the Quran and Hadith have told us on numerous occasions that when it comes to the companions, they have the divine endorsement. Allah tells us, وَكُلًّا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. The Prophet ﷺ told us, don't take them as target practice and object of criticism after me. So when we put all the evidence together, we are catching the drift here, which is that when it comes to the companions, you need to be cautious. They are a generation endorsed by the divine. You don't get to come now and start throwing dirt, start flinging trash. So that's why we exercise a lot of caution when it comes to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Tahawi said it beautifully. He says, وَلَا نَذْكُرُهُمْ إِلَّا بِخَيْرٍ وَحُبُّهُمْ دِينٌ وَإِيمَانٌ وَإِحْسَانٌ وَبُغْضُهُمْ كُفْرٌ وَنِفَاقٌ وَطُغْيَانٌ. He says, when it comes to the companion, we only mention them with khair because loving them is iman and religion and ihsan. And hating them, being resentful of the companion, is kufr, hypocrisy and rebellion. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our hearts are clean towards the companions. You guys, I always mention this. I don't know if I've mentioned this during Sunnah Fix. Do you realize Sunni Islam separates itself from every other branch out there because we have one ability that other religions even and other sects don't necessarily have. And that is, we have the ability to give benefit of the doubt. We have the ability to keep positive thoughts about a certain person or a group of individuals because we have that muscle of being able to give benefit of the doubt, to keep our heart clean, and to be charitable as possible. It separates us from other sects and other religions even. How so? So look, when it comes to the companions, Shia are not able to give benefit of the doubt. Their heart becomes resentful. Sunnis were able to do that. It separates us from the Shia. Alright, let's move up. When it comes to Jews and Christians, they're not able to give benefit of the doubt to even the prophets of God. Bible is full of stories where prophets are portrayed in unbelievably negative and toxic light. We as Muslims rush to their defense and we give prophets benefit of the doubt. It separates us from the Jews and the Christians. And let's move up a level. Atheists. They can't give God benefit of the doubt. Why is there so much evil in the world? Why is this happening to me? Why are there tornadoes and earthquakes? We're able to give divine the benefit of the doubt. We have the intellectual humility to say, you know what, just because I don't see the reason, doesn't mean there is no reason. Because we're able to give Allah the benefit of the doubt, that Allah knows His actions are laced with wisdom and knowledge. It separates us from the atheists. At every level, you and I are what we are because we have the muscle of avoiding su'ul dhann and practicing husnul dhann. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we become better at that. And it starts with our families, especially with our parents or any authority figure in your life, and it goes from there. Sometimes it starts with the ulama in your community and people of authority. Try to give as much benefit of the doubt. As Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu used to say, when it comes to the actions of your brother, give whatever positive spin you can, unless you have no option but to read in negativity. And this will inshallah keep you sane and safe inshallah. Nasallallahu al-afiyah on this front. So you guys, last week then, we started talking about Muawiyah RA and his life, and we only managed to cover his childhood. So today, inshallah, we're going to forge ahead into his life. After covering his childhood, the next aspect of his life that I want to talk about is that his acceptance of Islam. When it comes to his acceptance of Islam, Muawiyah RA, very rare, but just like Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, just like Ibn Abbas, Muawiyah radiallahu anh accepted Islam before his father did. And folks, you gotta understand, that's extremely rare in that society. Because in that society, they justified everything from paganism, worship of the idols, burying their daughters alive, and every other crime. How do they justify it? قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون. Oh, guess what? Gramps, he was doing that. Pops was doing that. I ain't going against my pops. This is family business. This is how we've always done things. So their elders were their celebrities. Their elders were their influencers. And they justified everything by chalking it up to their elders. He's going against the grain here, where he accepts a religion that his father is not upon, and his father is the chief. He is one of the leaders of the Quraysh that have been spearheading the campaign against the Prophet ﷺ for like 20 years. And he tells us that during the year of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, they walked all the way from Medina to Makkah because they wanted to do Umrah. It's been 6 years since the Prophet ﷺ moved to Medina. The companions have not seen the house of Allah. They're yearning, itching to do tawaf and visit Baytullah. And finally, after preparation, 14-day, 15-day journey on foot. When they finally get there, guess what? Quraysh blockades. You're not entering. You're not walking all over us. And they were denied entrance. Like, I don't think we sometimes transport ourselves into that reality. Like, imagine planning a vacation for months, and finally, everything is in place, and now, all of a sudden, you're not granted visa. What that will do to your psyche. This is not just a vacation. This is like Umrah. They want to do Umrah. They want to visit the house of Allah, which is part and parcel of their psyche, their spiritual upbringing. Anywho, Quraysh, violating all protocol, they do not want Muslims to be able to do Umrah. وَصَدُّوا عَنِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, and they blocked the Muslims from entering. Now, long story short, the Prophet ﷺ engaged in dialogue with them, and eventually there was a peace treaty that took place that is also known as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And part of the treaty was Muslims will not do Umrah this year. Unfortunately, they'll have to come back next year, which is known as Umratul Qada. Now, folks, I'm telling you all of this because Muawiyah says, when I observed the Muslims during this entire ordeal, the way they handled themselves, the way they negotiated the peace treaty, the respect and the honor they had for the Prophet ﷺ, the restraint they exercised, even though Quraysh was pressing all their buttons. وَقَعَ الْإِسْلَامُ فِي قَلْبِي. Islam penetrated my heart. He said later, I went to my mom, like, Mom, I feel like Islam is the way of life for me. I want to accept Islam. What did the mother say? Mother is Hind. This is the same Hind, if you know, who commissioned Wahshi. She was one of the individuals involved with the Wahshi who ended up assassinating Hamza radiallahu anhu. And she's the one who had mutilated his body. So she's not a Muslimah yet. And of course Abu Sufyan, Muawiyah's father, he is not a Muslim yet either. So anyway, he goes up to his mother. He's like, I want to accept Islam. The mother says, how dare you oppose your father? How dare you go against the family custom? Later, he couldn't hide this any longer, and this is Iman. It's very difficult to hide. Later on, he ends up opening up to his father, who's like, Dad, I feel like Islam is the way to go for me. His dad, he started playing comparisons. He started guilt-tripping him. He's like, you're not my real son. My real son is your brother. He's on my faith. He's loyal to me. So anyway, he faced a lot of social pressure to hang on to deen. Finally, during the conquest of Makkah, he came out with his Islam, because now everybody's kind of coming out with their Islam, including Abu Sufyan. He will accept Islam, at least at a surface level, and eventually his Islam will become proper. So, my dear brothers and sisters, what I'm trying to say is that he accepted Islam before his family did, and he had to take a lot of flack for that. He took a lot of heat for that. Now, some of the virtues of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu have reached us. Now these virtues are, I try to bring you the most authentic stuff, because when it comes to Muawiyah radiallahu anh, and even Ali radiallahu anh, because there was a lot of fitna at that time, a lot of fabricated reports are floating around. Allow me to bring you the cream of the crop when it comes to Muawiyah radiallahu anh. And let me tell you, our Shia brethren, when they hear this, they don't like it. They don't like any praise being doled in his direction. But you know what? Here is what I remind people. The ayah of the Quran, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Let your animosity towards someone not swerve you away from justice. Just because you don't like someone doesn't mean you're not fair to the praise that they're owed. So, Muawiyah radiallahu anh, what are some of the virtues that we know about him? First thing that you want to know, he was one of the scribes of revelation. Hadith comes to us in Sahih Muslim that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh says that كان المسلمون لا ينظرون إلى أبي سفيان. Abu Sufyan, his father, he recently accepted Islam after the conquest of Makkah. And you got to understand though, for Muslims, this is a bit of an adjustment. Because Abu Sufyan, his name was synonymous with the enemy for the last 15 to 20 years. They can't just overnight bring him to their dinner table. They can't overnight just start giving him a bear hug. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to this, yeah? To the reality that Abu Sufyan is no longer on your throats. He is your brother now. So some Muslims are having a hard time making that adjustment. So Ibn Abbas says some of the Muslims, they won't even look at Abu Sufyan, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu's father. And they don't want to sit with him. They don't want to really socialize with him. So it's really awkward. And Abu Sufyan, he's kind of feeling it. Now he's a savvy politician. There's no way he's just going to roll with this and he's going to accept this place that he has in the social hierarchy where people look at him and they approach their interactions with him with a grain of salt and they're kind of avoidant with him. He can't survive that. He's a noble. He's a chieftain. Obviously, he wants to upgrade his standing in society. So he goes up to the Prophet. He's like, Ya Rasulullah, I need 3 things from you, Ya Rasulullah. 3 things. Please give it to me. What are they? He says, Ya Rasulullah, my daughter. Now the Prophet is already married to his daughter, Habiba. So, Ya Rasulullah, let me throw a wedding for both of you. I want to throw a wedding reception. Now they're already married by this time, but he's like, maybe perhaps what he's thinking is that the wedding will bring the whole community together and people will see that I am the father-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, and you can't be like ghosting me like that. Can't give me a cold shoulder like that. He's like, let me throw a big party. Let me invite everybody. Perhaps that will kind of rectify the situation, my social standing in Medina and Makkah. And then second thing, he's like, as for Muawiyah, تَجْعَلُهُ كَاتِبًا بَيْنَ يَدَيْكَ. And this is why I'm bringing it up here. As for Muawiyah, my son, can you make him an official scribe? Make him one of your personal assistant. And then finally, his third request was, Ya Rasulullah, time to time when you're sending out the armies, make me leader over one of those battalions so I can fight the kuffar as I used to fight the Muslims. And hopefully this will rehabilitate my image in society. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no. One of the narrators, he comments, he's like, the Prophet didn't know how to say no. SubhanAllah. The Prophet said yes. And all 3 were granted. And this is how Muawiyah radiallahu anh became a scribe for the Prophet ﷺ. Now there's a slight difference of opinion here. Some say he became the scribe of revelation. Min al-kuttab al-wahi. Meaning the Prophet would get revelation. He would summon some of the companions. Obviously the chief amongst them was Zayd ibn Thabit. But if Zayd's not available, he would call upon other scribes. Some scholars, they say that Muawiyah was now one of them. He's part of this elite company who get to write down revelation as it freshly comes down, and then the Prophet would ask them to write it down and organize it according to the proper surah and the ayah number. Others, they say that he didn't become a scribe of revelation, but he was an official communicator of the Prophet ﷺ, where he would read the letters that would come. He would seal it off on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ. Now folks, Sunni Muslims here, we tell our Shia brethren, we say, why would the Prophet trust someone who's treacherous? If the Prophet is trusting him with revelation and to communicate on his behalf, surely the Prophet ﷺ is now going to choose someone of low character and low standing. So this speaks very positively that Muawiyah radiallahu anh, sure, he may have made mistakes and the fitna occurred, which inshallah we'll talk about next week or following week. But he also has virtues that put him in a very positive light. And we've got to take the whole package together. On that note, another narration I'd like to share with you, where Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, once again, He says, some people came to Ibn Abbas. They're like, yeah, Ibn Abbas, there's a narration we heard from Muawiyah. We've never heard this from anybody else. Only guy who has narrated this hadith is him. And it's not really sitting well with us because we have not heard Abu Hurairah say this. We have not heard any you narrating this hadith. No one else has narrated the hadith that he's narrating. In other words, they're feeling a little cynical. What is this hadith? The hadith is that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu says, and this once again comes in Sahih Muslim, that the Muawiyah and Bukhari and Muslim, by the way, where Muawiyah radiallahu anhu says that I helped cut the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during one of his umrahs. Scholars here, they interpret this that this was likely during one of the umrahs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, although he does not explicitly mention this in the hadith, but he says that qassa min sha'rihi bimishqas. He used a shaver and kind of cut some of the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, as that's one of the rituals of Hajj and Umrah. Now this is an honor to be able to cut the hair of the Prophet ﷺ. Sahaba would keep the hair of the Prophet ﷺ for barakah. But now these individuals who are coming to Ibn Abbas, they're like, he got that honor? We've never heard any companion report this. He's the one who's reporting this. Should we run with this? Should we just take this in stride? Ibn Abbas, when he heard their suspicion, what did he say? He says, "Ma kana Muawiyah ala Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam muttahaman." Muawiyah was not someone who had a shady reputation in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muawiyah was not someone in poor standing with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning what? He had a good standing. You don't get to just once again throw dirt like that and throw off suspicion like that. So this is once again proof that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was someone of noble standing in front of the Prophet ﷺ. He's writing down potentially revelation for him, definitely letters for him. And Ibn Abbas vouches here that the Prophet ﷺ saw him in a positive light. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ in one hadith in Tirmidhi made even dua for him. The Prophet said, Allahumma ja'alhu hadiyan mahdiyan wahdi bihi. Ya Allah, make him someone who's guided and guide through him. Make him a hadi, guide for others. Tirmidhi brings this report. And then in another narration, we find other wording for this dua, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma allim Muawiyat al-kitab wal-hisab wa waqihi al-adhab. Rawahu Ahmad. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Allah, teach Muawiyah the knowledge of the book and the knowledge of hisab, which could be translated as mathematics, record keeping, logistical management, and protect him from your punishment. Once again, the Prophet is making dua for him. The Prophet ﷺ, by making dua for him, once again puts him in a position which deserves our respect. Now, one of the greatest virtues of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَوَّلُ جَيْشٌ مِّنْ أُمَّتِي يَغْزُونَ الْبَحْرَ قَدْ أَوْجَبُوا. The first battalion, the first army from my ummah that will ride the oceans, قَدْ أَوْجَبُوا. It has become obligated upon them. What has become obligated upon them? Jannah and forgiveness. Haram, she hears it. She's like, Ya Rasulullah, make dua to Allah to make me from one of them. The Prophet said, you're from one of them. You'll be part of that army. Which, by the way, just a side tangent. Haram. She is going to be in her senior years by the time this is going to come true. A lady stepping up, she wants to be part of the army, and the Prophet does not discourage. And he says, you'll be from them. It's like something to think about, because subhanAllah, I feel like our Muslim societies sometimes are more conservative than the society of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet was like, you're from them. Now who is the first Khalifa to prepare the naval forces properly for the Muslims? Muawiyah. In fact, in one narration we're told, the Prophet says the first army to go on a conquest of Constantinople, modern day Istanbul, the first army to lay siege and to go on a war that will conquer Madinat Qaisar, the city of the Caesar, which of course is Constantinople. Maghfurul lahum, they're forgiven. And of course, who's leading that army? Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So these, once again, are like these are manaqib, these are virtues that put Muawiyah radiallahu anhu in a very respectful, honorable, and envious place. Now, a little bit of drama here that I like to share with you. There's one hadith though that comes in Sahih Muslim that puts Muawiyah radiallahu anhu in a negative light. The Shia, they love to jump on this hadith. So I got to share this with you. I'd rather have you hear it from me than anywhere else. Yes? So, hadith comes in Muslim that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, once again, the same Ibn Abbas who brought us a lot of positive stuff is now bringing us this. So there's credibility here. Ibn Abbas says, Kuntu al'abu ma'as-sibyan. By the way, it's easy to forget. By the time the Prophet passed away, Ibn Abbas is only 13-year-old. So he's fairly young. Ibn Abbas says, I was playing with children when all of a sudden the Prophet came and I tried to hide behind a door. Now why is Ibn Abbas trying to hide behind the door and trying to kind of avoid the Prophet ﷺ? Likely the Prophet gave him a task and he forgot and got distracted by playing or during play. So therefore he's trying to avoid that awkward dynamic. Anyway, the Prophet spotted him, he poked him a little bit, and then the Prophet told him, go, idhab wad'u li Muawiyah. Go and call Muawiyah for me. So he goes and he comes back and he's like, Ya Rasulullah, he's eating. The Prophet is like, idhab fad'u li Muawiyah. He just repeats the command. He's like, go and bring Muawiyah for me. He once again goes, comes back, empty-handed. He's like, Ya Rasulullah, he's still eating. So this time the Prophet ﷺ says, La ashba Allahu batnahu. May Allah not satiate his stomach. And when, of course, our Shia brethren, when they hear this, they're like, see, this explains it all. May Allah not satiate his stomach, meaning what? He'll always be greedy. Always be greedy for more. And guess what? He was greedy for power. When Ali radiallahu anh came to power, they tried to take it from him. And this all makes sense. It's all one big, insatiable appetite for power and greed that he had. The Prophet is saying it. Now, how do we respond to this? Once again here now, remember the Aqidah tangent we went on? We try to be charitable as possible to the companions of the Prophet and we find whatever excuse we can. So first thing the Sunni Muslims we say is, notice in the hadith, nowhere it states that Ibn Abbas went to Muawiyah and then told him the Prophet really needs you right now. Ibn Abbas is young, Muawiyah is a little bit older. Perhaps he's watching him eat and maybe he's not fully communicating it and maybe he's coming back and Muawiyah radiallahu anh doesn't understand the gravity of the situation, that it's urgent and now. Ibn Abbas doesn't say, he doesn't state. So we don't know how bluntly the communication or how explicitly and clearly the communication is taking place between the Prophet ﷺ and Muawiyah. Maybe he didn't communicate fully the gravity of the situation, and that's why Muawiyah is like, all right, you know what, let me finish the meal and then I'll come. And you got to understand, in our deen, there's a famous narration. The Prophet ﷺ told us, Al-Asha qabla al-Isha. If Isha prayer comes about and you're eating your meal, finish your meal. So there's some precedence in our deen that, you know what, let me hold off on something spiritual and let me take care of something physical and material so that I'm not distracted later. So maybe he's in the process of engaging in that. So we give him benefit of the doubt. But something even more to the next level. The Sunni Muslims, they say this entire hadith is actually a positive for Muawiyah, not negative. Well, how do we come up with that? In a hadith in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ says, Inni ishtarattu ala Rabbi azza wa jalla. I made a deal with Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, that anytime I say something offensive to another Muslim, Ya Allah, make that a purification and a reward for them on the Day of Judgment. Anytime I say something in anger, shatamtuhu, aw sababtuhu, anytime I said something offensive to another Muslim, Ya Allah, make that a source of reward for them on the Day of Judgment. Now the Prophet ﷺ, on occasion, to make a point, to communicate the intensity of a moment, the Prophet would use blunt words. Rare, far and few in the middle, but it would happen. Like for instance, when Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he asked the Prophet ﷺ a question he shouldn't have asked. He's like, Ya Rasulullah, would we be held accountable for what we say with our tongues? The Prophet was like, may your mother lose you. The Prophet is like, and is there something that will throw people on their faces in the fire more than the reckless use of their tongue? Now this is an expression, like to communicate disappointment, like what's wrong with you? Another famous narration, when one of the companions, he got a rock that came and hit him on the head, a big wound opened up, and then he's part of the army. The Prophet wasn't there, so he's traveling with some of the companions. Long story short, he had this big injury to his head. And then he went to sleep at night and he had a wet dream and now he needs to take a shower. He wakes up in the morning and he goes to the companions. He's like, look, I don't want to take a shower because the water will go into my wound. Infection may spread. How about I just do tayammum? some of the Sahaba who weren't very knowledgeable, they said, water is available. What do you mean tayammum? Stop taking the easy way out. You gotta do ghusl. Water goes inside his womb and he dies. The Prophet finds out and he's so angry. He's so angry. And here now he will use that blunt phrase. Because people need to understand this deen has boundaries and red lines that you don't cross casually. The Prophet said, they killed him, may Allah kill them. This is one of the most intense, one of the harshest things that have been reported to us in Sirah. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, though, he realized that he said those things. So what does he do? In multiple narrations, he said, he made a dua to Allah, Ya Allah, if I said something to someone, I made dua against them, Ya Allah, make that a positive for them. Turn that into good deeds for them. So we say, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, if he got this from the Prophet ﷺ, guess what? On the Day of Judgment, will be a source of reward for him, not punishment for him. So that's how, once again, we exercise our muscle of giving benefit of the doubt. You guys, I'd like to end our conversation today, our discussion today of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, by telling you about an aspect of his life which often goes unnoticed, and that is his commitment to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Commitment to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A couple incidents here that you want to know. First is a hadith that comes in Abu Dawood and others. Once Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and now he's the Khalifa. And he'll be Khalifa for 20 years, by the way. And he'll be a fantastic Khalifa. Inshallah, we'll learn more about that. He enters upon two famous individuals, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, the future Khalifa, not right now, but eventually he'll be the Khalifa, and Abdullah ibn Amir. Both are sitting together. Muawiyah enters upon them, and Abdullah ibn Amir stands up out of respect. Now, as a Khalifa, you are being given respect where someone stands up for you to honor you and to revere you. But Abdullah ibn Zubayr, man, this is Abdullah ibn Zubayr. He commands his own respect. Son of Zubayr ibn Awam, he does not stand up. And rightfully so, because he's more knowledgeable. And now Muawiyah, he looks at this. Now you would think Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he would look at Abdullah ibn Zubayr and be like, yo, we got beef here, like what's going on here? Why aren't you standing up? While Abdullah ibn Amir does stand up. To our shock, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu tells Abdullah ibn Amir, the one who stood up, he's like, Ijlis, sit down. فَإِنِّي سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ say, I heard the Prophet say, مَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يَمْثُلَ لَهُ الرِّجَالِ قِيَامًا فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. Anyone who loves that people stand up for him, stoke his ego, and make him feel like he's the biggest deal, he's like the sage on stage. Anyone who has that kind of vanity and ego, let them reserve their seat in the fire. He's like, sit down. Commitment to the Sunnah. In other words, Muawiyah is asking Abdullah ibn Amir to respect him less and respect the Sunnah more. And he's a Khalifa. That tells you his commitment to the Sunnah. In another incident, we're told that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says once Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was doing tawaf of the Kaaba. And Ibn Abbas says, I'm watching him do tawaf. And he is doing istilam of every corner of the Kaaba. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know what istilam is. Istilam is when you're doing tawaf. If you've done Hajj and Umrah, you probably can relate to this. When you're doing your tawaf, when you reach the corner of the black stone, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to raise your hands and you're supposed to symbolically gesture in a way as if you're touching the black stone. So you put your hands in the direction of the black stone, you kiss it, you say Allahu Akbar, and you begin your tawaf. Now the sunnah is you're supposed to do istila of the black stone, and which is the first corner, and then you're supposed to do istilam of the fourth corner, which is right before the black stone. Those are the two corners that the Prophet ﷺ would do istilam of. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu here, he's doing istilam of all four corners. And Ibn Abbas is watching him, and now Ibn Abbas, once again, he's probably a teenager, maybe a little older by this time. He's definitely much older by this time because Muawiyah right now, he's a Khalifa. Ibn Abbas though does not hesitate to correct him. He's like, I saw the Prophet ﷺ only do istilam of two corners. Corrected him immediately, even though he's younger. And by the way, this is something you gotta appreciate about the companions. They were polite with each other. They would be playful with each other, but boy, they were firm when it came to the sunnah. And they wouldn't, walk on eggshells when it came to telling people what's right and wrong. They're not overthinking this. They're not paralyzed. I don't know how this person's gonna react. Like Ibn Abbas right here, he's a teacher He's the Quran teacher of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. Kana yuqri'u Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf is a senior companion. One of those who have been promised paradise. This Ibn Abbas is his Quran teacher. And I'm sure Abdul Rahman ibn Auf is like few years, maybe like a decade or two older than him. No shame in this game though, when it comes to learning the deen. Ibn Abbas steps up, he's like, that's wrong. I saw the Prophet ﷺ only do istilam of two corners, you're doing all four. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he offers a response. He's like, but isn't the whole house of Allah sacred? لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ مَهْجُورًا. Nothing from the Kaaba should be left alone. The whole house of Allah is sacred. What's wrong if I'm doing istilam of all four corners? That's just me offering extra respect. Ibn Abbas says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Prophet ﷺ, you have the greatest role model. Muawiyah says, Sadaqta, you have spoken the truth. Meaning, yes, you want to honor the house of Allah, but you got to honor the Sunnah first. Because no one would honor the house of Allah better than the Prophet ﷺ. If this was more rewarding, he would have done it. So in the Prophet, you have the greatest example. And you guys, the hadith we're currently studying right now, you may have forgotten. Do you remember how this hadith started? Muawiyah radiallahu anhu wrote to Al-Mughirah ibn Shu'bah and he said to him, send me in writing some ahadith you heard from the Prophet. And he's the Khalifa right now. This tells you his commitment to Sunnah, that he wanted to learn more even as a Khalifa. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we give people the respect they deserve and that we honor them where it's rightfully and justifiably required for us to do so. That we do not let shortcomings and lackings of an individual to contaminate the entire pie of perception. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we keep our hearts clean towards the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.